Public Health and Safety Committee at 11:55. This meeting is called to order. Roll call, please.
Powell.
Here.
Hoffman.
Here.
McGilvray is absent with notice. Jackson.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Cavell.
Here.
Gingell is absent with notice. Kuhn.
Here.
Woodward.
Here.
Lubes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item is approval of the minutes from March 15, 2020. Who would like to make a motion? I have a motion by Commissioner Hoffman, support from Commissioner Nelson. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. The next is approval of the agenda. Who would like to make a motion to approve the agenda? I have a motion by Commissioner Powell, support from Commissioner Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. We come to our first public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on today's agenda? Then please sit at the front of the table and give us your name and community. And you will have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wilbur Sims. I live in Auburn Hills. I know we have 3 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead. I just structured everything down here to keep it in time. So good morning. I want to address the agenda entitled Establishing the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund. The resolution says that you want to create a trust fund which will be used for creation of affordable and obtainable housing units and for other uses, including but not limited to acquisitions, pre-development, and rehabilitation of residential properties for single-family and multi-family developments. You propose to put $5 million into the trust fund with this resolution, and then another $5 million under a separate resolution. Furthermore, you want to add another $2 million per year forever, since it doesn't show that there is a date that the resolution will end. So respectively, I do have 3 problems with this resolution. The first one is the resolution does not show how the COVID-19 pandemic has made more severe the limited availability of stable, safe, and adequate and obtainable housing in Oakland County, as required by the U.S. Treasury final rules. The resolution only makes the claim that the virus caused a housing issue without any proof. Please advise this does not comply with page 30 of the final rules, where you must explain why the harm to households was made worse or caused by the public health emergency. The final rules also say you must design a program that responds to the impact coming from COVID. Further, you haven't shown any explanation of why a capital expenditure is appropriate here, or compared solutions as required on page 31. Secondly, the resolution is to create a trust fund. Excuse me. Nowhere in the American Rescue Plan Act or the rules does this allow you to take federal funds to create a trust. The funds will be considered by some to be a slush fund. Why, you may say? Because there is no plan defining the specific use of the funds beyond the desired and to create affordable or attainable housing. Furthermore, there is no defined projects, no measures of planned outcomes or goals, and no accountability for the use of the funds. The resolution does not even mention who the beneficiaries of the trust will be. Everything is kind of vague in that sense. Third and lastly, the resolution requires the trust to submit a report on their activities only once per year. Now, we know there isn't a bank in the country that will give an entity $5 to $10 million and not expect progress reports more frequently, especially during the first year. So with no progress reporting required, do you expect the public to have to submit a FOIA request to see where the taxpayers' money is going? So the resolution just seems to be a way to squirrel millions of dollars without actually taking the time to define the specific projects that require funding. So finally, commissioners, just want you to also be aware of something else that the law quotes. Funds used in violation of the final rule are subject to remediation and recruitment. As outlined in the final rule, treasuries may identify funds used in violations through reporting and other sources. You don't want to have to reimburse the federal government tomorrow for poor planning today. I suggest that this item be removed from the consideration until specific needs and project plans are developed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to items on the agenda? Welcome.
Oops. Good morning. My name is Beth Felix, and I reside in Clarkston. I want to comment on the agenda item entitled Appropriating American Rescue Plan Act Local Fiscal Recovery Funds for the Oakland Together Housing Security Initiative. The resolution, including the Cavell Amendment, will allocate $7 million for the Oakland Shelter Capacity Fund and $2 million to reestablish the roofs, ramps, and repairs program. Here are my concerns about this resolution. Exhibit A, which discusses Housing Trust Fund and growing that fund to $40 million, appears to have nothing to do with the Housing Security Initiative appropriation covered in this resolution. Exhibit A should be removed from the resolution. If Exhibit A meant to support the creation of a trust fund, why does its text differ from the text within the Establishing the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund resolution? For example, one resolution calls for a task force of 12 members. The other calls for a board of 7 members. One calls for $40 million by 2030, while the other calls for just $12 million. Exhibit A says that the trust fund will generate revenue by loaning money, but the trust fund resolution itself fails to mention this area of risk to taxpayers. Which is it? Exhibit B provides an overview of the proposed Oakland County Together Shelter Capacity Fund. In the section labeled Purpose, the document says at least 90 new year-round permanent shelter beds will be created for $7 million. This comes out to nearly $78,000 per bed. Something is very wrong here, and since matching funds are supposed to be obtained from each shelter provider, the cost per bed is outrageous at over $150,000 each. The ongoing monitoring of funds and expenditures appropriated by this resolution is not sufficient for such a large dollar proposal. I have 2 concerns. Quarterly Shelter Capacity Fund reports will be provided by the Neighborhood and Housing Development Division to your Public Health and Safety Committee to monitor the use of funds. However, no quarterly reports are required for the roof, ramps, and repairs expenditure. Also, while an annual report for the entire Oakland County Together Housing Security Initiative will provide to this committee, no annual report will be provided to the full Board of Commissioners. Why not? So lastly, this program may not be needed. It appears to duplicate programs already in existence in local municipalities and the state of Michigan. For example, the cities of Ferndale, Pontiac, and South Lyon, and the township of Royal Oak have public housing programs already. Ferndale and Pontiac offer Housing Choices Vouchers, HCV. In addition, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, MSHDA, has housing vouchers. For these reasons, I believe the Oakland County Together Housing Security Initiative should not move forward. The proposal itself is not written clearly. The cost is way too high. The program lacks good monitoring of spending, and the program appears to duplicate existing local and state programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I think it's afternoon now. Yeah, barely. I have a couple of concerns. They've covered the housing. I totally agree. There's no logic to creating the housing trust, and I'm not so sure it doesn't violate securities laws. I used to have a license to sell limited partnerships, which would include things like a housing trust. So I haven't got clarification from an attorney, but I don't understand why any government would have an authority to create a trust that doesn't benefit the citizens anyway. That seems to be the nutshell. And I see 7E as a communication from the executive office on the Oakland Together Mental Health and Wellbeing Grant information. They call it a Q1 report. I know they've said that they quarterly monitor these things, but the only time I've ever seen a grant oversight committee was November 4th. It was run exclusively by United Way. The entire agenda was simply their presentation, and it was modified after the meeting. So I did not feel that there was any oversight to be had by any of the commissioners that actually attended the meeting, because they were provided nothing without getting a FOIA as well. Or I'm not sure, but I didn't think they had the full data they should have had, because to me, if you're overseeing grant applications, there were 62 of them for mental health services to be provided throughout our county, but there were 8 or 9 that were in the high category, like 500 grand. Those, it was very concerning how many that were declined, and there was no application data to support why they were approved or why they were declined. And the commissioners who have fiscal oversight and required to do that didn't have that data to be able to do so. So I actually have a real problem with that. I actually have a problem with the practice of modified documents. I didn't pull this the last time, but the Woodward amendments in the Lago meeting on 3/15, one was for the sheriff, where Commissioner Colwell had one version and Woodward rewrote it. All the parks were rewritten. I find that extraordinarily offensive. I really do. As a citizen, I think you have an obligation to be open with us. And I'm actually very concerned. They're talking about not having anything else online, but we also have the personal protection orders. The last meeting we were talking about the safety and the victims on the human trafficking. But personal protection orders are no longer allowed to be done in person. I don't know how you do that. If you have a crisis situation, I thought they used to have to go to the judge and get an order to get protection. So I don't know how you Zoom those things. And for me, I have no clue how anymore I can operate in this county, because they seem to want everything digital, so we have zero control and zero ability to FOIA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to comment regarding items on the agenda? All right, I will close this public comment. We move on to communications. There are 6 items under communications. The 2022 Traffic Safety Grant, grant application for the fallen K-9 replacement. Communications with the Area Agency on Aging 1B. Communications from the Animal Shelter and Pet Adoption Center report for February 2022. Communication from the Executive Office on Oakland Together Mental Health and Wellbeing Nonprofit Grant Quarter 1 report. The last item is a communication letter from the Royal Oak Police Department in support of the resolution appropriating funding for staffing modifications in response to the Oxford School shooting incident and increasing threat environment. I have a motion from, who would like to accept the communications? Motion from Commissioner Cavell, support from Commissioner Nelson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our communications has been approved and accepted. We move on to our regular agenda. Our first item is from the Sheriff's Office. It's a grant acceptance with the Michigan State Police for the 2022 Emergency Federal Law Enforcement Assistant Grant. So I see our Under Sheriff and Tom Hardesty here to speak to this. I have a motion by Commissioner Hoffman, support from Commissioner, who would like to support? Commissioner Cavell. So welcome.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add about this item?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As you know, I'm not with the Sheriff's Office, but we were involved in the information passing with this grant, so I'm here to help explain why this one is a little different than many we see. Originally, after the tragedy with the Oxford shooting, our office was contacted by the state. They felt had been contacted by the federal government and said there may be some funds available in regards to response and recovery with this tragedy. So they actually requested a budget. There was no grant document, no request for us to fill out. They asked for a budget. Originally, we submitted a fairly significant one. We included any costs that we felt were related around the county to the Oxford incident, including expected prosecution costs, supplemental staffing cost, mental health recovery costs for the sheriff's office. We would get feedback from the state saying, well, they don't think the feds will take this, they don't think they will take that, but it was actually the state who was submitting a grant request to the feds, not Oakland County. So eventually, they told us that, okay, they're going to see what money they could get, and then the next thing we know, they tell us, well, yes, the feds are going to approve money, here's the money, and here's a grant agreement. So at which time, and the only funds that they were approving, were my understanding, were from the sheriff's office, also for some of the local communities, but that didn't go through the county. So then that paperwork went to the sheriff's office, and then they submitted it through grant review. But it's somewhat similar to our FEMA reimbursements, where we don't submit a grant application actually until they have everything and have already said, okay, we think this is good. You can apply and get your funding at almost the same time. So that's why this kind of proceeded in that fashion.
Thank you. And I don't know why we wouldn't accept a grant award to reimburse funding.
I know the normal process is to get approval for ahead of time, and I don't think the state knew that they were going to actually send us the money before generally they don't, before we actually sign a grant agreement. But.
Any other comments? Chair Woodward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, like, so does this $320,000 cover all of our response? Actually, Dan's probably the one who knows this answer. Like, all of our costs. So anyone who showed up at the scene, anything that was part of the investigation.
I can tell you one piece that I know, and she got so the mental health portion where they paid deputies to go spend some time and seek mental health treatment, they're telling us, well, there will probably be a different grant that may cover that in the future, but other costs I'll let Gail.
Okay.
Yeah, so this, what we did is, as best we could, because obviously it was, but we went back and we created a code so we could track all the overtime that was related to the response. So that's what this covers.
So
we
just
went
the
back,
overtime,
we did
not
payroll.
like- Yeah, I'm sorry. Go
We did payroll corrections and changed it to a code that was specific to Oxford. And so that's what we submitted to them. And that's what they said, like, hey, just give us up to this date. Because like Tom said, it was kind of broader at the beginning, like, hey, give us this. We said, hey, we're going to spend this much on the initial counseling response and, trauma response. And then that wasn't included. It was just the overtime related to the initial response. So they
So-
kind of,
Got it. So
limited
not
it.
the cost of, I guess, the non-overtime stuff, because
Right.
that's considered just like, that's expenses that you have to incur, we have to incur anyway, because we
Yeah.
have the personnel to respond. This just covers the overtime
Yes.
elements of it,
the above and beyond what.
above and beyond. I mean, and not just on site of the event, but any overtime that was incurred, I mean, as a result of investigating.
No, I mean, it was pretty limited to, and I can't remember the exact time frame. I can get it for you, but yeah, they kind of cut it off and said, no, from this time frame. So I can get that.
Yeah, and I don't recall their phrasing, but they're looking at the immediate response. Now, that may involve 12, 24 hours later, but not weeks and months
Yeah.
later.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll go to last question. So this money comes in, does this refuel your overtime budget, or where does it go?
Well, it'll just go to the general fund, so it will offset it. So,
We'll offset it
we
at some
spent
point.
it, it'll.
That was my last one.
Yeah,
Okay.
offset it.
Got it.
So
Thank
no
you.
gain, no
Got it.
loss, just recovery of what we actually spent.
Got it.
Thank you. Anything else? Prompt the vote, please.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you. Our second item from the Sheriff's Office is a resolution appropriating funding for staffing modifications in response to the Oxford school shooting incident and increasing threat environment. And we have our same team here. I need a motion. I have a motion by Commissioner Jackson, support from Commissioner Hoffman. So, all right, thank you for addressing this item.
Thank you, yes. We're here, this was the item we were here for before, for 4 sunset positions. 3 of them would be utilized to help facilitate training, active shooter training for schools, and then 1 would be assigned to the computer crimes unit for creating, hopefully as part of that same program, a video that we could use for a debrief and to show the response. And I have Captain Hill here that can also help answer any specific questions related to this.
Well, my first question is, the puppy dog looks like he's doing extremely well. So thank you for bringing him.
You're very welcome. That's Callie, one of our.
Callie. Thank you. All right, Chair Woodward?
So, I mean, a couple things that, I still think that we need to get addressed in this is that, the funding for these positions are still coming out of the Oxford Response Fund. And while I acknowledge that heightened security in schools across Oakland County are important, definitely induced as a result of the terrible Oxford tragedy, I don't think it's appropriate to pull money out of that fund, particularly since that we are still dealing with the effects of it. And what I'm mindful of is, are there additional costs that are directly related, that are necessary for the effective prosecution in these cases? I know it's not as much in the media as much, but to make sure that we have the full cost of cover those things, as well as addressing the mental health needs of students, faculty, families that have been directly impacted. And so I want to make certain that those, the dollars are preserved, because this basically spends that down to, that fund down to nothing. So if we think it's important and it's necessary to have additional positions doing these types of things, then we need to have another funding source, and whether we pull that from the general fund or some other means, I think we need to, make the appropriate corrections to that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, some of it is also timing. Do I support additional training for schools and personnel and teachers, et cetera? Absolutely. The question is, how do we make certain, how do we do this in a way that's efficient and effective across the entire county? And so one thing, it just happened, representatives from Oakland Schools are here. Something that I've asked is, if we build the capacity to do the training in our respective schools, do we have some sense of assurance that the 20-plus school districts, the public academies, and others are going to actually use it, or are they going to, use different training protocols that they have in place? And a request that I put forward to Oakland Schools is, and I know the superintendents are gathering soon, is to give some, yes, we're going to use this, or we're going to go in a different direction, or they prefer to go in a different direction. I realize that there's support for this conceptually in a letter from Oakland Schools. That's included here. I have talked to superintendents, and I think that there is an openness, some sense of direct. If we're going to, bring on 3 additional staff people, one to help with the direct coordination with those individual school districts, and I think the others to do to actually facilitate the training and all the things that are necessary for that, as well as provide training to other faith entities that have experienced an uptick in threats nationally and so forth. If we're going to build this capacity, let's have a measured sense. It's not going to lock it in. I was thinking initially, like an MOU, school districts tell us that you're going to use this. I think that there is a huge amount of value of having kind of a same level standard of training being applied across the entire county. I think that's great. Before we do that, we should have and I don't think you have to have 100%, but 50% of the school districts saying, yes, we're going to do that. Why bring up in the context of timing that we're in April right now? I don't know how much realistic training is going to happen in the school districts. I'm married to a teacher, and I know the next couple months that this is the wind down of the school year, so I envision that this is more maybe summer prep and fall, preparation for fall. I know we got to get people in place and everything like that, but I think we have a little bit of time to do that. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the superintendents will talk about this at their meeting in the next couple weeks. To signal, because I look at it 2 ways. Is like, if a superintendent says, listen, this is what we currently do, we prefer to keep doing this, then how do we accomplish both? How do we provide the internal build capacity and internal training capacity to do more of it? And for those that are doing something different, we can do, we can explore another way of helping offset the cost of that. And then lastly, I believe that there is, I would be interested, I know that just as we've gotten a significant amount of like ARPA dollars, I wonder if the school districts are interested in helping support this. In the short term, I'm less concerned, but if this is something we want to do and we want to build capacity long term, we probably should have a conversation, how are we going to pay for this long term? I think it makes a lot of sense to, get a base level of training. We know that every school district's been trained, all buildings have been trained, and whether that's annual training or every couple years training or whatever's necessary to make that happen. So I think that there's some additional information that's needed to accomplish this, and so I'll stop there.
Thank you. This is not the first time we've spoken about this. This training is not just for schools, it's also businesses and churches and any entity that's interested in training or threat training, et cetera. And it also has a sunset clause for 2024. So we're assisting others in getting over what we consider a trauma that has happened in the last 6 months. Commissioner Powell?
I just wanted to make sure, and I think if Commissioner Woodward is thinking of pulling this, or we somehow have some postponement in regarding of clarity, because as you all know, Pontiac, as our school district, our city, has been going through a lot of traumatizing things over the past years. And I have not seen this much attention devoted to a city who's been traumatized for so many years. And now we take all this effort to put into this, with this situation with the school. Yes, it was very traumatic. I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to misconstrue that. It was very traumatic, and I'm excited that we are able to put the resources that is needed in that community. But I want to make sure we take a deeper dive, look across the board, because our sheriffs are not just in Oxford and Pontiac. They're in other schools too. They have needs as well. And I just think that fair game ground right now is not being fair. And I would rather us look at it from an in-depth, make sure every community across the board is getting the same type of attention, because right now, y'all already know, y'all heard in the news, Pontiac is constantly going through something. And we have not gotten any mental health treatment, trauma, dedication funds to help community members in our city. But y'all didn't think nothing, it was no thought to do it for Oxford. So I have an issue with this. And I want to make sure, and also too, you can explain, because I may be venting. It may be something I'm misunderstanding. Y'all know I'm okay with all criticism or correction. But y'all putting 4 officers, and it took hell and high water for me to get 1 officer, 1 additional officer, and y'all made the school district match. So if we're just going to up for training, other stuff going on in Oxford, I just want to make sure every school district that we have a brown and gold in, we make sure that resources is fair ground. Ain't no more slacking on Pontiac. And I will say this, y'all have stepped up tremendously, but I see a lot of money going to this community, and right now, we are being traumatized. We just had a 7-year-old get shot. All last summer, we was being sprayed. When I say sprayed, we had a lot of drive-by shootings. Now, what I will say to clear that, the reason why we couldn't solve it, I will say this, is because community members didn't step up. But I think if we would have put maybe more resources there at that time, we probably could have got further ahead and reduced a lot of those shootings and getting them people off the street. So that is my comments for today. Chair, you can correct me on some things, but you know this is a very sensitive topic when it comes to these officers in these schools and just additional officers, period, with cities going through what they're going through. Thank you.
Commissioner Powell, I'll clarify, just so you know, these positions would be used countywide, not just for Oxford. They would be countywide positions.
All right, so at least y'all see I'm advocating for every person that got a sheriff in there.
No, yeah.
But still, and yet I still want to understand how we breaking things down, what is going, and what will be the resources that they can eventually, which I know we're moving in that, because again, this situation has created a new eye-opener for us too, and how we need to move forward moving, you know. So I know it's a lot of new stuff, but I like to put things on record so everybody know where I'm at. Thank you.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Thank you. Chairman Woodward made a valid point about uniform training across the county. I think that's a great idea. And I'm sure that's what the plan is. But how many school districts of the 28 plus the academies will participate? Because they have to reach out to you, right?
Yes, sir. Captain Todd Hill, just this week, we have 2 schools, 2 churches that we're consistently or doing right now. So the request isn't because we hope that if we build it, they will come. They're coming now. We are reallocating not only regular hour resources, but overtime resources to fulfill these needs. And as for the summertime being a lull, if anything, right now we're only doing, or not only, but we're doing a lot of training that when school is not involved, right? Because the teachers and the staff are actually, have jobs to do and are teaching our kids. So we're doing that either after hours, we're doing it on their work days. I would expect an increase in the summertime. In 2015, we did Oakland schools, we did school bus training, and I want to say we had about 200 participants. This year, correct if I'm wrong, we're looking at 3,000 participants. So we're looking at running a max of 100-person class multiple days through the entire summer. So we're talking about tying up resources that we really don't even have to tie up for the entire county. We have gotten support from OCTAC, which is the Oakland consortium of all the police chiefs. We've gotten multiple support letters from the different school districts. And again, this isn't just patrol services or the contracted resources for the sheriff's office. This is to work hand in hand with the current school districts. And regarding, I know this is a long way to get to your question, sir, but to get to that unified tactics, there's already pretty much a set unified tactic. That unified tactic was established about 15 years ago, and it's called Run, Hide, Fight. Came out of Texas. There are a number of different agencies that will support different commercial programs called ALICE or Alert. Some are paid and some have a little bit more involvement. Our instructors are trained in all of them, or in some manner or fashion all of them. So whatever that school district is doing, or whatever that school is doing, we will adapt our course for that district. And the bottom line is that they all have the exact same purpose, whether it's Alert, Avert, ALICE, and it basically is that preservation of human life is the most important thing. And the people have to do and fill that 7 to 10 minute gap for the police response. And that's exactly what we saw, and why the casualties are the low numbers that we have. Sadly, those are significantly low numbers when you look at some of the recent events that have happened throughout the United States as well. And that's directly due to that particular training that particular school did. So I think that every time we kick the can down the road a little bit, we're missing the point that we're currently doing this training now. And it's basically, we're busting at the seams to try and provide this to every community, whether it's one that we police, whether it's one we don't. And I think that's what the issue is, that this is the reaction because of Oxford. And I think that's, to me, that's the nexus. That's how we link this together and how we say that these funds are appropriate. But again, I'm not, whether we use this fund or another fund, I don't mind which one we use. What I do know is that we need funding to continue this and to work with the different local law enforcement agencies and the school resource officers to make sure that they provide the training, because they're asking for it. And as soon as summertime hits, it's going to be through the roof.
And somebody mentioned here, too, that this is for not just school districts, but it's for business. But this one's really for school districts.
Schools and church places of worship, we cut out, we're not doing any businesses because we don't have the resources,
Right.
and we'd probably have to charge them.
Okay, I appreciate what you guys do. I support what you do, and I thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Chair Woodward.
Promise my last time.
Okay.
So, I mean, the issue, I mean, if a school, Alice trainings are happening somewhere. I mean, our officers are trained to be able to do those trainings. There are school districts that contract with someone else that also sometimes do those Alice trainings as well. So I guess my question is, like, so if you've got, I don't know this, so is this a half are using Alice right now? Or they're contracting with some firm to deliver the Alice for whatever reason. They determine that best fit within their schedule. Would they is the idea that they would no longer do that and possibly be able to rely on this to be able to replace that so that there's a cost savings in that. I mean, I would ideally like to see a cost sharing in that. If they're not, I mean, are they going to continue to run Alice simultaneously with, I mean, this training overlay? I think that's where I'm struggling with, which is why I want the superintendents or the school districts to say, yes, we're going to lean on this service, we're going to incorporate this, because I think while I believe the core basis of all this training is the same, I think having a core group of people delivering the training is a way to ensure universal delivery of that training, and I think that's probably in the best service of everybody. I mean, in terms of, the nexus of using Oxford Response Fund, and I think that's where a little bit of this is coming together. We created this Oxford Response Fund to address this immediate tragedy as it occurred, in the event. This is reaching far beyond that, and without question, that was not the intent to use these funds beyond the tragedy at the moment, but rather to respond to it. Do I think that there's a need of training and support? Absolutely. Am I supportive of funding it? Absolutely. I just think that we need to first take a stock and measure of the school district. If this level of service exists, will you use it? Because we've got one of the positions, the coordinator role, right, to actually do the coordination. Two of the positions are to actually provide the training, or to supplement, to add to those who are able to do training.
Yes.
And if that's the case, I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to say, to ask our school districts, will you use this? Before we find a way to create it. At this point, until we find another funding source, pulling this out of the Oxford response, because I think, to do this is not the appropriate thing, that we need a little bit more time. And I'm willing to work between now and the board meeting to kind of figure that out. But we're not, at this juncture, I'm not ready. I can't support this as it currently is. The goal, the purpose, I think that there's a conversation with our superintendent that needs to happen. And if we have that, then I think we can put something together. I could also see that if there are, let's say, a dozen superintendents say, I don't know what an ALICE program costs for a school district. Is it $15,000, $20,000? I have no idea.
It's,
Per
I
school
think it's
building.
more in the 40, 50,000. But again, depending on the size of the school districts, and
Right.
just to, I know you're in the middle, sir, just to clarify on the ALICE. So the ALICE model is a blended model in which my goodness, my dog is not happy with, hey.
Somebody
Oh,
outside
goodness.
she doesn't care for.
To answer on the blended model, the ALICE model, and I would love nothing more than someone to come in and say, listen, we're all going to go with one particular model. The reality is that not everybody has the same funding mechanism, not everybody has the same theories on things. So when we come in with hey, this is a preservation of human life, and whatever model you want to follow, whatever acronym you want to follow, that's fine, because they all get to the same end goal. The ALICE, what that does is, that does some certification, which there's some online training beforehand. That's why it costs money. There's some discounts and so forth that they encourage or offer or use that as whether it's sales techniques or whatnot. But what that then does is then it asks that they do their hands-on instruction in cooperation with their local law enforcement, and that's the service that we provide. So whichever school district model that we're in is what we provide.
Right.
And again, I would love nothing more than to get on with one particular thing, but I think this is a conversation that Alice is not new. This is like a early 2000s
I get that.
model.
I get that. And we've managed to pull agencies together to coordinate on other things, and maybe we can never get everyone on one, and that's perfectly fine. But I guess my point is that sometimes Alice, and I'm aware of where Alice is in some places, and they do coordinated training with their local law enforcement agency, not the sheriff's office. If they're going to continue doing that, if we have $1 million to spend towards this, is it? Do we break it up in pieces? Like, okay, well, if you don't want to be part of this, I think that there's economies of scale that actually doing something more centrally, there's advantages to that, which is why I'm supportive. If some school districts want to continue to pursue something a little bit, I don't want to say separate from that, that maybe this board should be considering how to help them continue to do what they're currently doing, if that's, I mean, what makes sense. But without knowing that, like, I mean, of all the school districts, how are they doing this? Because at some level, they're doing this. Everyone's doing this on some level.
Well, and we are, and that's my point, is we're still doing this every single day, whether we have the funding or there or not, but we're busting at the seams. We're overtime, where there's 3 or 4 nights just this week that we're doing training, right? So this is continually going on, and school's in session today. So as much as I'd like to say, listen, let's come up with a perfect model and implement it, that perfect model is going to take several years for everybody to agree upon. I mean, we can't even agree upon this in this room here, the small group that we have. Like, and I'm not trying to be arrogant about it. I'm just saying that.
It sounds a little arrogant.
What I'm saying is that we're trying as best we can to work with what we have, and we continually still get threats. We continually still have needs and necessities at the agency.
Right. And what I'm saying is that there are some communities that are doing this a different way than this, and where I believe actually adding additional capacity can help reduce the costs for some of those local communities. But those conversations, to my knowledge, haven't actually happened yet. And I'm looking at the deputy superintendent who affirmed that the superintendents haven't talked about this, and I have actually formally made that request to say, can we have that conversation before we bring on additional staffing capacity, and then the same school districts that we've been doing, which is only, how many school districts have we done training with?
To this point, I don't have that number right offhand, sir. But
less than half.
Absolutely.
Right, less than half. So,
And
I think, and the perfect thing would be that provided for all the school districts, and all the school districts be able to take advantage of this. But if they're going in a different direction without knowing that, and maybe it makes more sense to split the baby, and like, okay, well, we'll build up some capacity, but then we'll give grants to local school districts to continue what they're currently doing. And that is the budget question to consider. Everyone wants more training. I think making annual training we should be doing that, and being able to say that Oakland County is the first county in the entire country that ensures that this level of training is happening every year in every one of our school buildings across as well as our places of worship. And I want to be able to get there and support.
We won't be the first, sir. It was Washtenaw County in 2013. So
I usually follow second to Washtenaw County. I can accept that. Okay.
They mandated Alice in 2013, and they annually train every single school on Alice training.
So it sounds like this needs to be thought through more to enable that to happen. Is that what you're saying, Chair?
I love that. I mean, I guess I'll settle for second.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Do we still have an issue with copycat threats?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Is it diminishing at all, or?
It is diminishing a little bit, but still the amount of resources that are needed, especially because normally that would be given to the school resource officer to investigate. Now, because of Oxford, the demand that the school resource officer that's assigned to one particular building, or whatever their assignment is, if it's 2 or 3 buildings, they want them in that entire building. So it is now being pushed back in either detective, or it's been pushed into overtime, along with back to more assistance from the computer crime unit that's, again, already bogged down from the actual response from Oxford and preparing for the case and case adjudications that we have pending. So.
What are the numbers? I mean, is it 100? Is it 10? Is it?
It's a couple a week, I think. I mean, I know it's a couple a week of threats. You're saying? You're asking numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a
quantity
couple
of how
schools a
many
week.
threats?
I could have to research it to get you an actual number, but I think we had at least 2 last week that I remember seeing. And I may not have been notified of all of them.
And that would be 2 that made at least a significant impact that would be advising.
Okay. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. So, all right, what I'm hearing is some commissioners are in favor, some commissioners want more information, but you can vote as your heart and your intellect dictate. So I'm going to call the vote after Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. Quick comment. I just wanted to ask about the computer crimes position. Will this be to investigate the type of threats that Commissioner Hoffman just brought up, or will it also investigate computer crime, which we know is increasing in general? Because this kind of like speaks to using the Oxford money as well.
This one would be dedicated to school threats for the county. Any threats that we receive that may be in our school district or not that we're made aware of, and assisting with setting up for the training as far as pulling video. Right now we have a dedicated deputy that's taken away from his current cases, that's been working strictly on this case, testifying and still reviewing video. But this position would not investigate new stuff, just, well, the new threats.
And as those new cases come in, they set aside, right? They set aside the work prepping for a case. So, like I said, there's one out of the three that are assigned to our computer crimes that normally would carry a third of the caseload is really dedicated to Oxford or Oxford copycats. And in the off chance that there is actually even time after that, right, then that will prepare for and help us with there's additional training stuff that we had talked about.
I'm
Madam
going to
Chair.
call the vote now, so
Well,
we can
I move to
vote.
postpone? I'm going to make the motion to postpone. I mean, I think it's really important to talk to the superintendents. So like, make the motion.
We
to
can make the
postpone.
motion if we have a second. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Prompt the vote for the amendment, the postponing.
I ask a question, I know you usually don't, but. Well, I just want to ask the sheriff
Yes, please.
department, is there some kind of urgency or timing thing here we're concerned about, or? Because I don't have any, I agree with what Chairman Woodward said about getting on the same page with everything, if we can do that, but I just wonder.
Our staffing is thin, but I would take a postponement over a no, just to be simple.
Commissioner Powell.
I was just gonna bring up that I'm not trying to rush things, but Chair Woodward did say maybe by the next meeting, our
I mean, that would
board
be, I mean, well,
meeting.
the superintendents aren't meeting before that.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, when I said that, I mean, the next round, because the next committee meeting will happen after the superintendents. I keep putting the deputy superintendent on the spot, but I did put that ask of him to make sure that conversation happens and that we can get to yes.
Do we want to pick a
So
date?
April?
Say it will be on
It'll be on the next, yeah, up in
the next public health and safeties. Can we say that?
So at the beginning of May, then, we should resubmit it for the, because this is the only
I
set of
think you
meetings in
just- I
April.
think you just, well, this is the same one, just keep it, and then it is automatically on there.
Prompt the vote.
On the postponement. You have 6 yeas, 2 nays.
Thank you. The motion is carried, so we'll resume this discussion at our next Public Health and Safety Committee meeting, although while I am assured that this program is valued and offered not just to schools and others, we'll continue that discussion. Our next item is from the Sheriff's Office, reorganization of the department, position upgrade, and creation of a new division. Who would like to make a motion? A motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Jackson. Thank you for staying with us.
Good afternoon again. Yes, Sheriff Bouchard we would like to reorganize the Sheriff's Office, create a new division, technology, information, and innovation. This really, a big part of this is in preparation for the body cameras. We know we hope to have them soon, and we know that's going to entail quite a bit of work. So we've submitted to reorganize. There would be an upgrade of one position, and some other things will be shuffled around within the Sheriff's Office from our Emergency Response Division and our Satellite Division. And we're asking you to approve this, please.
Thank you. Which commissioner has a question? Chair Woodward.
Not a question, I just similar when we have reorg in HR, that this is a cost-neutral position, like you're moving positions up and down.
I
Yeah,
believe there's
it
only
says-
a
it says
10,000.
cost-neutral, right?
No, it's actually a slight increase, so for 2022, it's $3,682, so it's pretty minimal.
Relatively.
Yes, so,
Reporting changes. for
so
the
I would
cost
say
neutral.
yes, cost neutral, but
Oh,
It's-
okay. Well, like I said, the financial, budgetary, and reporting changes for the cost-neutral movement of the other positions.
yeah, so several of them, so we're moving units underneath this,
Got
so
it.
that's where the cost
That's-
neutrality
that
was. So,
cost
yeah, so the
neutrality's
one,
enough.
yeah,
Okay,
so
cool. All right.
those are cost neutral. The one upgrade
Upgrade.
is the only cost.
It's a
Yes, minimal.
modest,
Yes.
well worth it.
Commissioner Powell?
Oh, no, I'm okay.
Thank
Pass.
you. Huh. All right, prompt the vote, please.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Our next item from the Sheriff's Office is a grant acceptance with the Michigan State Police for the 2022 Paul Coverdell Forensic Science Improvement Grant. Who would like to make a motion? I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Jackson. All right, what would you like to add about this item?
Okay, so this is just our annual grant for the forensic lab in the amount of $71,553. It continues a portion of a position, and the balance of it purchases opioid test kits.
Thank you. All right, any comments? Prompt the vote, please.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. So our next item. Sheriff's Office.
We'll step away from the microphone.
A resolution establishing Marine Patrol Services for agreement rates from May 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. I have a motion by Commissioner Hoffman, support from Commissioner Nelson.
Okay, so the board had requested that we change our procedure a little bit. Historically, we have included marine rates with the marine agreements. However, the board asked to see them separately, so we're here with a separate resolution trying to establish the rates for the upcoming marine patrol season, which starts usually around Memorial Day weekend. So what we are hoping is that you'll approve it today, and then we can get the agreements together, bring those back at the next public health and safety meeting, which I believe is the beginning of May, and get those rolling. The communities are anxious to get them in place. We do have a few changes. So the normal cost recovery includes salary, fringes, deputy supplies, uniforms, boats, gas, and maintenance. But to keep consistent with the other contracted agreements that were passed in December, we have included a cost for body-worn cameras and indirect costs based on recommendations from the county executive's office.
Thank you.
So that is all included in the rates you see.
And this is a service we've provided for 50 years. This is an ongoing service?
Well, what happened is we started offering back in, I want to say 2008, 2009, when we had budget cuts. We used to have a full service marine unit. When we had to cut positions and cut general fund positions, we implemented this contracted rate. So any community that wanted specific patrol hours on specific lakes, they could contract with us. So that's where how this was established. We still respond to all emergency calls on local lakes, but we just don't have the capacity to patrol everybody every weekend, as much as everybody would like. So this is an option for them to get additional patrols.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman?
I'm looking at, this is the hourly rate a Marine deputy with a boat for 2021 is $36.86. Then overtime with rate is $47.99.
That was in 2021. So that's.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
I'm just
and then-
asking a question.
Yep.
It's not the hourly rate plus the overtime rate.
No, it's one or the other. So if
I
they're
have-
regular hours is the regular rate, and then if they're on overtime, it's the overtime rate.
So what's the new rate? I don't think I see.
So I think in the write-up from the board, it lists the former rates, but in the actual resolution has a table for 2022, 2023, and
I
2024.
don't think I even see that on here.
That's the draft resolution. So go to the resolution.
Oh,
Yeah, so there's the policy,
it's in the
policy analysis has the old rates, and then the resolution has the new proposed rates.
oh, I see it now. I hate to say that's cheap.
But we have the hourly rate, we have PT&E fringes, and then we have the same formula, we have a formula for deputy supplies, uniforms. So, we can't make a profit on it, but we include what we think is fair. And like I said, we worked with the county executive's office to come up with a rate.
Yeah.
And it is, an increase from the last set of rates.
Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are the hourly rates subsidized by any state or federal grants?
No, this is a straight cost. This is based on what, the hourly rate and then the additional items that we need to kind of recoup. So we set a rate, but no, there's no grant funding. That all goes into the general fund for marine safety.
So is it fair to say that the money that goes towards the hourly rates of the Marine Patrol officers and all the materials and gas and things that you had mentioned, does this come out of the sheriff's budget? Where does the funds come from?
To pay, well,
fund this program?
we bill so this is only, so the money that we get for this, so we estimate this is how many hours. So each lake will contract, say, hey, we want, I don't know, I'm just making like 250 hours for the summer. So that's what we put in the resolution that will come back to you with that community and saying they need this many part-timers at this rate. So we estimate what they will get from that. That's what we put in our revenue budget.
Sure.
And then we bill them for the actual hours on the lake. So when the person works on the lake, then they come, they code it to that lake, and then we bill it, and then obviously.
So why am I recalling, and I could be completely incorrect, I know we've had many different
Yes.
grants that come before us in
Yep.
regards to the slow wake, no wake grant programs, but in the past, have we ever subsidized this Marine Patrol program utilizing any grants from the state or federal?
Not the contracted rates, because this is just based on the actual, like, they're paying for a service that we give them. So the marine safety, that would, and I wouldn't use the word subsidized, but that funds, like, the emergency response.
So what about like the slow no wake grant?
That was a one-time, we just got that last year, so that was for specific for erosion and that sort of thing.
But was that utilized for any of the Marine Patrol on the lakes?
Well, it was specific to the grant, so anything that they may have patrolled depending on where the requests were, where the needs were, because there were specific lakes that had these that were eligible for that.
Sure.
So
there was potentially
yes,
some
yes,
offset
so there were-
costs due to that specific.
So there were lakes
slow no wake grant.
that didn't contract with us
I see.
that benefited from the slow no wake, if
Okay.
that's what you're at.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification.
Anything else on the Marine Patrol agreement? Prompt a vote, please.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you. Our next item from the Sheriff's Office is a contract law enforcement services agreement with the Parks and Recreation Commission from 2022, 23, and 24. I have a motion by Commissioner Hoffman, support from Commissioner Woodward.
No, yes.
You supported.
Yes.
Your hand was up.
I did fine.
Okay.
Sorry.
So this is an item we've had on the agenda before and referenced. This was related to a contract that expired at the end of March and coming back after the Parks and Recreation Department completed their analysis, and so this agreement will delete 2 positions moving forward. Are there any other questions about this agreement? All right, prompt the vote, please. No. Thank you.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending your day with us. Our next item is from Health and Human Services, Health Division, Grant Amendment Number 3 to the fiscal year 2022 Emerging Threats Local Health Department Agreement. May I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Jackson? And before we enter into any conversation with Leanne Stafford and Calandra Green, I'm going to ask for my help to come look at my, well, maybe.
Mine
Computer
going crazy.
is going dark and then bright again. All right, welcome. What would you like to add about this item?
Good afternoon. As you said, I also have Calandra Green with me to answer any programmatic questions you may have. But this is an amendment to accept some additional funding, about just a little over $189,000 This is to help us respond to in our NFP program around COVID and what COVID has created the demand we need in our NFP program. Just as a reminder, our NFP program, amazing program, really works with first-time moms to really prepare them for their first child. And so our nurses are in these homes really working very closely with these moms and these families. This also will provide emergency COVID relief. So if the family needs groceries or they need maybe transportation needs, this grant will allow us to offer those one-time costs to those families.
Thank you. Commissioner Powell?
I think, as I always try to put on record, I think this was the program that supported me and my daughter. She'll be 17 next year, but I took advantage of this program, and it was wonderful, and I appreciate it. And anytime anything comes across me for a vote for this type of program, you know you have my support. So thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope my colleagues will continue to support this program as well.
Thank you. Anything else? Prompt the vote, please.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our next item is from Public Services. Animal Shelter and Pet Adoption Center, a donation acceptance of the gift to the Oakland County Animal Shelter and Pet Adoption Center. I have a motion from Commissioner Hoffman, support from Commissioner Nelson, and we have Bob Gatt and perhaps Joni here to talk to our great donation. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. I've been sitting here listening to a lot of requests to spend money. I'm here with just the opposite request. A very, very generous man passed away not too long ago, and in his will, he left us a sum of money from a Roth IRA that we accepted a couple years ago. And just recently, we learned that he also left us the contents of his bank account, which totaled over $1 million. Oh, and yeah, nice bank account.
Nice bank account.
This man was a resident of Madison Heights. He was a retired Royal Oak Township police officer. He had adopted 2 cats from us in the last few years, and his generosity just stunned everybody at the shelter. I don't think anybody ever expected a sum like that to be left to us, but it was, and I am here on behalf of the shelter asking your permission to accept those monies and have them deposited into our legacy fund account.
What a really commendable, honorable item to, we want to thank Mr. Threet. Is that how you say his name?
Mr. Thweet, yes,
Threet.
absolutely.
Yes.
He was an animal lover, a cat lover, and he thought about us right up to the end. And we're very appreciative, and we're working, assuming that we get your permission to move forward. I've asked all the staff members at the shelter to weigh in on what they would like to see happen, and they did. And we've condensed that to a few projects that I'm working with our director, Barb Hankey, and of course, our deputy county executive, who's here behind us, to get permission to move in that direction. So it's all just in the infant stages right now, but we would like to put Mr. Thweet's generosity to good use.
Would you consider a plaque, something to memorialize
absolutely.
him?
In fact,
I agree.
One of the things that we're hoping to accomplish is to add a little bit to our building. Our building, as you know, you've all been there, and if you haven't, please come. It's about 4.5 years old now, and we've found some flaws. We've found some things that we need. one of the things we need is to add on a little bit to the building and build some more what we call dog suites. If you've been, you see all the cages inside. Some of the dogs don't do well in the cages, and we have them housed now in separate rooms that we call suites that were designed to be visitation rooms for people that come and maybe bring their pet to see if the one they're looking at, that they get along. We want to build a whole series of these onto our building. And if we do add something to our building, we'll name that after Mr. Thweet, absolutely.
Thank you. Commissioner Powell?
At the certain points of when you're going through for projects, is that to come before us for for approval, or by us approving this today, it kind of gives you free will to do what you want with the projects?
Oh, no. Any monies that we spend out of the legacy fund has to come before you first. We are in the midst of a project right now, long before we thought Mr. Thweet was going to give us anything. We are in the midst of adding some outside cages to our shelter area. We came before the board a couple months ago, got permission. I think we transferred $130,000 out of our legacy fund. That was just the beginning. In fact, tomorrow we have a meeting with some architects that are going to give us some final touches. We will come before you again to ask permission to spend some more of our legacy fund money that is not even included in this amount. So we can't spend a penny without coming to the board.
Thank you. I'm just happy you're the person who can answer that, and it came from the horse's mouth, and I just wanted it on record, because sometimes the community think we just pass stuff without,
Oh, no.
things in place and order. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, prompt to vote, please.
Besides this, about 700,000.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gapp, for waiting with us. Our next item is near and dear to my heart. This item began in August of last year. It's an informational item at this point, a resolution appropriating American Rescue Plan recovery funds to increase licensed mental health professionals in all 28 local school districts and the public school academies in Oakland County in partnership with the Oakland schools. I have asked Dr. Yoakum in attendance to perhaps address any questions. Again, this idea started in August. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot of our kids don't know how to learn after 2 years of virtual learning, which resulted in negative behavior in schools and the inability to learn because of the behavior. So providing access to more mental health professionals in schools to support the learning atmosphere, I think, is an important item for us. Is there anything you'd like to add about that, Dr. Yoakum?
No, I think the severe problems that we're facing in terms of youth mental health have been well documented. And obviously that impacts schools in a myriad of ways. But one of the things I would like to add is that schools are where students who do get mental health support typically get that support, the vast majority of them.
Thank you. Chair Woodward, what's your question?
I mean, I think there's three things, and I think, Chair, you are absolutely right. I think this is one of the most pressing issues that we've got to deal with. I mean, in the wake of the pandemic. So, in your estimate, from your vantage point, where is the biggest challenge? Access, an increase in number of mental health professionals in the school, a pipeline of people to do the work, to do that, or kind of like this, the mental health home, if you will, like to make sure that it's not just like sit down and talk to me a couple times. Like, what's the full wraparound services and needs? I mean, my sense is it's all of it. And like, what's the best way to move forward to kind of achieve this objective, which I know, I mean, Chair Lubes has been leading on. I remember when I went to school, and we had much more mental health professionals in the schools, social workers in the schools, than we do today. And how can we help, at least in the short term? But then, like, what's the 10-year plan or ideas on how to?
Well, the 10-year plan, ideally, schools are where the kids are. And to create health homes in the schools is ultimately where we want to go, so that we know that every student in Oakland County has access to health services. And primarily here, we're talking about mental health services. And we can do that by pulling together all of the organizations that need to partner on that in order to make that a reality. That, I think, would be the highest priority. It would take a little bit longer to do, but that's where we want to go. We know no student is lacking services when those services are necessary. As the Commissioner has made very clear, this impacts the central mission of schooling, which is student learning. That's true with mental health, physical health. So creating those health homes is doable. We can do this in this county. I hope that's the long-term goal. Secondly, we have to fill the pipeline. This is a desperate need to find mental health professionals in order to fill the need that is out there right now. And again, that's well documented. So finding ways to impact that pipeline is critically important. And of course, it impacts the problem we're talking about here, which is getting mental health professionals into schools to provide the services necessary. So there would be some challenge with doing that, but we have to try to get mental health professionals available to students in schools now. We've noticed a significant increase in mental health concerns coming out of COVID. Well, I shouldn't say coming out of COVID, but coming back into school face-to-face as students have returned.
Thank you. Commissioner Kuhn?
Madam Chair, so once this passes this committee, is it going to the full board?
This is information. This is the beginning process. It's taken many months to reach this point. So they wanted to put this idea out there. Each person can mull it over, ask questions, and then I would like to bring it back to this committee for a vote to go to the board.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Nelson, followed by Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Yoakum, has there been any conversations in regard to potentially looking at having curriculum be placed in? And I know that this is asking at a higher level. Obviously, you're looking at the State Department of Education. But in your experiences, especially over the past 2 years, have you been privy to any conversations in how we could take a look at adopting and bringing in a mental health curriculum? I know that there's been some pilot programs, so I'm sure you're familiar with West Bloomfield's Prepare You curriculum that they embedded in within their high school program. They piloted that. It seemed like it was amazing. They've grown from that program. But has there been any conversations, and do you think that as we do move forward that we may start to see mental health embedded in to curriculum?
There have been many conversations. In fact, I was in a conversation yesterday. Let me explain it this way. There's really 3 tiers to trying to resolve this problem. At the first tier, we're gonna touch every student. We're going to provide curriculum. First of all, we're going to create schools that are socially, emotionally, psychologically safe places. That's critically important. Then we're going to build curriculum that gives students the skills to help them become individuals who have the skills in order to have good social emotional well-being as they move into adulthood. So that becomes the first tier, finding the curriculum available K-12 that will do this. We do have in most of our districts the Michigan Health Model, which provides units of study that are focused around student mental health well-being and teaches students skills, are intended to teach students skills towards mental health well-being. So that's the first tier. The second tier is when the educators in the school identify an issue of concern. And maybe that means sending the student to see a counselor who can make a determination if there's something more serious. And we have been working across the county to bring in assessments that are available in districts that can do a really quick screening of students. Right now, we're working with BH Works and have that in some of our districts. So that screener becomes really helpful in that tier 2. And then tier 3 is when there's a need for longer-term services, the kind of services these mental health professionals under this resolution would provide, where they're going to see the student over many visits.
So would you say that tier 3 would be an IEP or a 504 plan?
Yes, it could be through an IEP. There's been an important change in Michigan that happened just a couple of years ago. We were able to get an amendment to the Medicaid plan for Michigan. It allows a district to get Medicaid reimbursement for a student that does not have an IEP.
What?
Or a student who has an IEP, but that IEP doesn't allow them to get mental health services.
Sure.
So now a district for a Medicaid-eligible student can get that reimbursement from the federal government, which will help to start...
Without an IEP, right?
Without an IEP, which means all students who are Medicaid-eligible, which is important because we can leverage those funds to begin to provide services to all students in a district, combining that with other funding sources.
I appreciate the response. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Any other comments? I would like to add that this is not a foreign idea to us. A few years ago, we brought nurses into the county at the beginning of the pandemic for each school district to help support and assist in parents and teachers at the school. So our nursing program turned into a permanent program. I'm reiterating, this is not a foreign idea to bring staff in to support our schools. That would eliminate, where I see it as it would eliminate future problems. If we're able to work with a third grader now, it's going to reduce any problematic behavior in ninth grade, 10th grade. It's a win-win situation for everyone. Commissioner Cavell?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what you're saying about this not being a new precedent because of the nursing, but also when I was in social work school, I used to work in DPS as a school social worker, and we had to cover 2.5 schools per social worker or school counselor. And my wife recently stopped working in Berkeley schools, so they're down at least one counselor, but they had her at part-time. So just trying to give personal context to the need that you're bringing up, so I appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear also about the social emotional learning. It seems important. So this is exciting.
Commissioner Jackson, followed by Chair Woodward.
Just wanted to ask, Oakland County Health Network, the Health Navigator program that they have instituted to work in the schools as well. When you mentioned screeners, were you speaking of them being used as screeners?
The navigators, my understanding of the program, it's pretty new, but the navigators would help a district in getting services for students once they have been identified as a student needing services. So the screener becomes a step towards that. Again, it's a quick assessment of the situation so that the student can get someone who can make a better determination, more long-term determination if the services, more in-depth services are needed. But the navigators then help guide the district to a provider in a way of getting to those services.
Got you. So it's a different level of assistance.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Thank Chair Woodward.
Well, and I think what the motive, I mean, what Chair Lubes is talking about this is about, I mean, structurally permanent on-the-ground staff that can help with like this different tier, this identify the screening, helping, I mean, support individual students, providing the long-term care and everything like that. I mean, we got a number of school districts. School districts also got a tremendous amount of ARPA dollars to try to, I mean, catch up, learning catch up and the adjustment of the pandemic. Is there any effort, and I already made an ask of you, so I'm going to hedge this, but again, out of all, I mean, all the school districts and the public academies, is how are they addressing the mental health? I mean, are they bringing, I mean, I've heard anecdotally, I mean, some school districts are bringing on a social worker or a couple extra social workers, but it doesn't seem, I mean, I've not seen a big full picture of what that is. And I asked, like, is there any, are school districts using those dollars to address the mental health issue? And if so, what additional gaps still exist? Because that might help inform, like, how, I mean, how to leverage these dollars.
We have an effort underway right now. We have funding, actually Honor Community Health, who was here earlier, has a grant from Michigan Health Endowment Fund. We're a partner. We have someone from the Oakland County Health Department there. We have OCHN there. We are working with the Institute for Health Policy out of Michigan State University. In fact, we had the steering committee meeting yesterday. We are collecting information from every school in the county in terms of what services they have available in mental health and how they are funding that and who the providers are. So we're hoping to expand that work to get more information, to deepen the information, but then particularly to use that information towards what I was describing earlier, Commissioner Woodward, toward creating health homes for every student in this county. So there is an effort to get the information right now, and we've made the first pass at it. We're now going to be working with business officials at the school districts to be sure we've got all of the funding sources clearly identified, so we understand what is available, what can be leveraged, where the gaps are, and so on.
Is there a timeline when all that will? That would be very helpful, I think, to, I mean, Chair Luke's efforts to figure out, like, okay, how does this fit in with that? I mean, so not to be redundant, but helps build off it to get it off the ground.
We would have the information from the business officials by the end of the school year, certainly. So we'll be able to pull that together with information we've already collected.
Thank you. You are the expert. You and your staff are with our kids 8 hours a day, sometimes usually more than what parents spend with their children. So teachers have my respect and require, in my mind, support coming out of a pandemic to help our kids learn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavell, did you have your hand up? All right. Oh, Commissioner Nelson.
Yep, that's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just lastly, Dr. Yoakum, knowing that $3.7 billion of ARPA was designated to Michigan schools, and then obviously each county and district within each county, got a substantial sum of money this time around with the American Rescue Plan. How has our local school districts been spending that ARPA money? Like, is there a common theme, or is it like each district is pretty much separate in how they are utilizing these ARPA dollars?
They are separate in determining how they're going to utilize the ARPA dollars. And I don't think all of the decisions have been made. I don't have any specific information I can give you to answer that question. I could tell you the themes you would guess around things such as school safety and student well-being are definitely high priorities in districts across the county.
Excellent. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So, thank you, Dr. Yocum. This item is on here for informational purposes. If you have any questions between now and when we bring it back to our committee, please feel free to ask in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you for the time.
Our next item is from Health and Human Services, Neighborhood and Housing Development Resolution establishing the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund. So, well, I welcome Shane and Rudy. Do I need do I have a motion?
First, there's item K first.
This is the,
Jay.
yes, the housing,
Together.
establishing the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund.
Weird. J is before, is after K. Okay.
Who would like to make a motion?
Oh, it is. You're
Isn't
right.
that weird?
It is reversed on our
Yeah.
agenda. Okay, got it.
Okay, cool.
You said make a what?
No,
I'll
it's
second
not
that.
on my agenda. I have a motion by Commissioner Powell, support from Commissioner Cavell. And Shane Bias and Rudy Hobbs will be here to present on this information. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. I know we've had conversations probably over the last several months about housing trust and shelter capacity and home repair. So I just really want to say I appreciate, everyone's patience, everyone's willingness to kind of partner. Some ideas were great. Some ideas that we had were not so great. You were very honest in letting us know which ones those were. So we really just appreciate the back and forth, seriously, because it kind of got us to a point where I really felt like, we're going to actually do some good here. So there's a number of things. Can I talk about the whole package, like the whole things, one? So, you're going to have the housing trust before you today. We'll talk about, as you know, one of our community indicators around our strategic plan is around affordable housing. And so Shane and his team and our health and human services and their team, have really kind of been thinking through, what kind of tools that we need in the toolbox to really kind of address affordable housing, increase the number of opportunities here in Oakland County around affordable housing. And the housing trust is one of the tools that we really hope to bring forth, to kind of put in our toolbox. Number two, you'll see, that we'll have we have a proposal in front of you around our critical home repair, which we think, can be, we do a great job of that right now with our home dollars. But we really feel like we could be doing a lot more because, again, one of our strategic community indicators is aging in place. And so we really want to help, some of our most needy seniors, with their home improvement so they can age in place, and do the things that, they would like to do, as they continue to age, right? And then the other piece is shelter capacity. I think that we kind of saw this during COVID. Where, we had, these settings where, where we had to put so many people into a setting, and it wasn't safe, for our homeless population to go into a big gym during COVID. And so one of the things that we really kind of thought that, we could be impactful in using some of our ARP dollars is really helping some of our partners in the community build non-congregate setting, shelter. So with that being said, you're going to have a number of these, again, a number of these initiatives in front of you. We can kind of go into more detail, but I really think that that's really kind of driven by you in terms of the questions.
Thank you. Questions? So this is related to the County Housing Trust Fund, which is going to bring about new positions within our housing department.
Yes. Shane, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll go briefly into the framework of the Housing Trust Fund. So there's a couple of components you want to keep in mind. One is the administrative capacity and oversight and related to that is we're asking for a pair of part-time positions, a manager and a coordinator, to help run the day-to-day kind of administrative duties related to managing the trust fund. And then also the other part of that administrative capacity and oversight is the establishment of a housing trust fund board. 7 persons, 1 from the Neighborhood Housing Development Division, 3 appointed by the chairperson, 3 appointed by the executive, and they will help to provide oversight and approval authority related to the management of those funds. And as such, those meetings will be subject to the Open Meetings Act for oversight purposes. And then the other part is the funding stream. And the $2 million annually coming in from general fund, as well as the one-time ARPA infusion up front, will help both get it kickstarted, but also allow for it to be sustainable over time, which is what a lot of developers need. They need to know that a proposal that they're working on, that there's going to be a funding opportunity available a year or so from now when they actually start to have those conversations about what a proposal might be. So those are a couple of the broad strokes of the framework of the Housing Trust Fund.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman?
Okay, and the Reader's Digest version. So this one resolution that we're talking about right now will set up a fund for developers, right? If they want to. Nonprofit.
Yep.
Is this one you work with developers then?
Yes,
That want to
developers, some
build?
developers are nonprofits.
Okay, but they will build, if they decide they want to build a project, let's say they want to build 60 rental units, this will give them some money towards their development, up to, what is it, $1.5 million or something for each project?
It's up to $1 million.
$1 million?
Anything over $1 million, $1.5 million, I should say 1.5 million, will have to come before the board. It would.
Okay, and then along with this development they do, let's say it's rental units, they have to set some aside, a certain percent. Now, what percent would that be? What is it, 5% or?
It will depend on proposal to proposal. So for example, let's say the overall development cost is $10 million, and we're putting up $1 million of gap financing from the Housing Trust Fund, it would be 10% of those units would have to go. But if it was perhaps a $40 million in total development, and we're only putting up, $1 million, then it would be whatever, 1 divided by 40 is.
2.5% or whatever the number comes to.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there anything else in here besides that? I guess I don't know what else in this. This is just for the money to help create more housing.
Yeah, finance.
Yeah.
Whether it's home ownership or rentals.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
How would it work with home ownership? You set aside, let's say you're building a subdivision of 30 homes, you would have to set some aside at below market rate so they could purchase it based on their income.
Right, and generally speaking, renters are disproportionately affected by cost burden. And so it will depend upon what the Housing Trust Fund Board, along with a manager created, finally decide on for prioritizing. But I know typically speaking that these kinds of developments will, in all likelihood, tend to focus on supporting renters more because they're disproportionately affected. And we have it written in there for homeowners to be supported as well, because we wanted to allow that flexibility that as things change and with the approval of that Housing Trust Fund Board, that they could do that in the future.
Is there anything else I need to know? Is that basically it?
It's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner
I don't have
Nelson?
any problem.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one of the questions I had, I know I appreciate, Charlie, all the work that you've been doing, gosh, over the past, it seems like year now plus, and Deputy Hobbs and Shane, I know that the 3 of your names always seem to come together when we talk about housing, so I do appreciate the hard work that everyone has put in, because it definitely is not an easy task. One of the things I know I'd mentioned it to Commissioner Cavell is, when we think about, we are utilizing the American Rescue Plan dollars, right? So when I think about the American Rescue Plan dollars and I think about, you know, some of the qualifications or requirements that we have to abide by and follow. And even more specifically, looking at the impact that COVID has had on communities that are disproportionate, right? I mean, I think it's fair to say we all know that some of our communities have definitely been affected differently due to the pandemic. So with that being said, why was it considered or was it discussed to take a look at having these new builds take place in communities such as Oak Park, Southfield, Pontiac, areas that we know statistically have been disproportionately affected by COVID?
I'll start that one. So the beautiful thing about a housing trust fund is that it offers an administrative capacity and framework to manage multiple different funding sources that come into it, whether that's through a financial institution donating, ARPA funding, general funds, et cetera. And with each one of those funding streams, notices of funding availability, NOFAs, would be put out to the community, to the developer community, focusing on different geographic areas within Oakland County. So you can imagine something like ARPA related might focus on some of those economically disproportionately affected communities, more so than some other funding streams. So with each individual funding stream, those considerations are going to be put forth, reviewed, approved by both the board and the manager overseeing the trust fund.
Okay,
And the only thing I would add too, and I just, I kind of share this, with this committee because, it really kind of governs us, and what Shane does over in housing is our voluntary compliance agreement with HUD. So, we're still very much under the thumb of HUD. HUD has not allowed us to say, we're satisfied, every single one of their demands that they had in that agreement. One of those demands was deconcentrate property, right? So, that's basically, if I'm speaking very, bluntly about it, it's not putting poor people with poor people, right? It's giving, people an opportunity, as Shane kind of, put it yesterday, the dignity, right? To live in a community in which they want to live, and not being stuck, in certain communities. I think we have a tendency sometimes here in Oakland, to kind of, really kind of focus on certain communities. But I think that, us, in our conversations with HUD, we very much have to be very careful about how we move forward with development.
Excellent. Can I just ask one more quick thing? Where at within the resolution is it talking about the upgrade, the home repair?
It's the next resolution.
Oh, it is the next resolution. Okay, I'm like looking, I'm like, I can't find it. So that makes sense. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Powell?
This is for educational for me. When a developer comes, be it, or, submit whatever necessary documents, that development, though, still has to have some type of approval from the city, correct? In regards to that development even happening. And the reason why I wanted to put this on record is because, it's another step to it. And I didn't want people or developers who listening to just think, oh, one and done with the county. No. We know it's a lot of community involvement where these new developments may take place, and it's a whole process with the city. So if that is the case, I mean, you can say correct with me or break it in your terms for public's knowledge, if you can.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump on what you said about it is a process.
Yeah.
And we might put out a notice of funding availability for X dollar amounts out of X pot of dollars. And we might say the application window is 2 months. Well, really, that proposal, that development idea has been in the pipeline, in conversation, and working with probably some other funders as well for long before that. And so, for the record, yes, all local approval processes would need to be followed for any city, village, or township wherever a development proposal is, possible to take place.
Yeah, and the only reason why I'm happy you explained that too is because it's good that we're trying to what's the word you just used?
Deconcentrate poverty.
Deconcentrate poverty, because as a representation for Pontiac, that is one of our community's concerns at developing more of those developments in communities that's already kind of hurting. So, you know what I mean? Like, we don't want to, and I know that that was something good that Rudy kind of focused on, that we kind of not do that, or, so I'm happy that the deconcentration factor is in there. Thank you.
Commissioner Kuhn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple questions. Why just nonprofits?
Well, we go through a process here, right, where we have to, when we put something to civic clerk and it makes its way through every single department, well, this one kind of got hung up, in Corp Council. And Corp Council came back to us and said, based on Public Act 156, the county, we can't use our dollars in this manner for this activity with a for-profit. It actually says that, right, that we're restricted to using those dollars with nonprofits.
And the other reality related to that is a lot of nonprofits who are developers, they have a lot of experience supporting individuals, not just related to the cost of rent, but also wraparound services as well within their proposals.
So we're limited by law.
Okay, and you have a board here of 7 people. You're only giving them 2-year terms. I mean, why just a 2-year term as opposed to a 4-year term where you'll get a little more continuity, or alternating terms? Can you address that?
The 2-year term, because a lot of people are already going to be coming with a lot of experience in this arena, and the way that is written currently right now, it doesn't preclude a renewal of a 2-year term. That is something that could be looked at and evaluated in the development of the bylaws. But right now, it's 2 years, and again, those can get renewed. So there's no reason that if somebody is really working hard, they're really working out, that they would be limited to just that 2-year term.
Okay, and Madam Chair, should this pass unanimously, could you assure that we could put that on the regular agenda?
If it passes unanimously, that's the next step. On the board agenda?
On the regular board agenda, as opposed
Instead
to
of the consent.
agenda.
Oh,
I mean, otherwise I'll have to vote no, just to make sure that it gets on a regular agenda.
so what you're saying is either way, it's going on the board agenda. Happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, anything else? Prompt the vote, please.
Making sure it's labeled the right thing. I was a little confused.
Yeah, sorry about that, we fixed it.
Uh-oh.
Did they fix it? Was that before or after you printed it?
You have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. So don't go too far away. Our last item is from the Board of Commissioners, budget amendment appropriating American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds for the Oakland Together Housing Security Initiative. So I have a motion by Commissioner Cavell, also as a presenter, support from who? Commissioner Powell. Thank you. I didn't want you to go away because it refers to housing, and you might be able to answer questions that someone has.
Madam Chair, I'm so sorry. Just point of clarification. This is item K.
Well, Tracy fixed it. Say she's moved it back.
If you refresh your screen,
refresh your
it should be
screen.
fixed.
Like what?
According to my agenda, this is what I have.
Okay.
No, you were right, Penny. It's just it went.
It did its own thing.
Yeah, it was a.
Everybody, I recommend refreshing if you haven't, because it'll show up now. Correct. So thank you.
Okay, great. So, like Rudy was saying, I believe we've all have talked about this a lot. So, what you're looking at first is the original resolution, but there's an amendment to make sure it's focused just on two things. First, a $5 million shelter capacity fund, and two, a $2 million critical home repair fund. And I have with us Leah McCall, who can answer any questions about the shelter capacity fund from the Alliance for Housing. And regarding critical home repair, Tim Ruggles from Habitat for Humanity and Susan Harding from OLSHA can speak to critical home repair if we have questions about that. And I think I'm going to copy Rudy's style and say, if you all have questions, we can talk about it more.
Any questions? Commissioner Powell?
I just wanted to get
speechless,
clarity with the critical home repair. I know I talked to my colleague this morning, but I have to put this on record, and I want to get it from the leaders, right? The horse's mouth. Okay, so with the critical home repair, can you please let me know what is the difference with the current home program we had in place, or even if it's still in existence, because I know HUD has required us to change some things, and how does this differentiate from that one? And is there the income? You know, the income was a big thing, and a lot of people couldn't get access to the one that we had. What is the difference? Can you please enlighten me? Thank you.
I think I'm probably best suited to address that. Okay. So a little comparison and contrast. I'll start with the familiar one. The home improvement program with Oakland County Neighborhood and Housing Development Division is supported by both home and community development block grant funding. And you're correct that there are income limitations associated with those HUD funds, and they cover and can support the majority, the overwhelming vast majority of Oakland County geography, because most communities are part of our home consortium, which is a HUD.
Wait. Oh, sorry. They can hear you on that mic. Move your mic. You need to move your mic. I know. Sorry, we're coming. Move your mics. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's all right. And so our program has a broad geographic reach, but it's limited to household incomes. And those vary from year to year, and they vary depending upon the size of your household. But generally speaking, is at or about below 80% of the area median income for the Metro Detroit area. And that is modeled with a loan. And so the idea is a 0% deferred loan that doesn't come due until change of ownership of the household. And so usually what happens is the homeowner might pass away, or they sell the house, and then the proceeds of that house then cover that loan. Well, that money then comes back into the home improvement program that can get turned around and to support additional loans. And this is something that actually brings in enough revenue to just about double what we get from the federal government to support this particular program. And so it kind of keeps it going perpetually. So the one that you have in front of you for today on the Housing Security Initiative, supported by ARPA funds, has a much more limited geography associated with it after working with our consultants to make sure we were spending the ARPA funds in an appropriate way. And they would be focused on qualified census tracts. And that is, basic definition of that is more than half of those households in those qualified census tracts are at or below a certain income threshold, such that basically if you live in that census tract, you're going to be eligible for this particular program. The unfortunate reality to that is that it's a much tighter geography associated with those qualified census tracts, because the way the ARPA language was written was to help focus on those communities that are economically and have been disproportionately economically impacted by COVID-19. So the nice thing about this is it really can help support those communities that need it the most in a grant-based format, because with ARPA, it doesn't make loans realistic or practical as far as how to go about administering the program. But at the same time, we have the other tool in the toolbox. And again, there is no single tool that works for everything, but we have our other home improvement program tool in our toolbox that can support those communities that might not be covered specifically with this particular source of funding.
Okay, thank you, and I'm so happy you explained that because that has been something I have been trying to get help and assistance for. I just hope that again, it does come with certain requirements and restrictions, but it still gives us a bigger pool of people to try to help. And that's all I was really asking for, because I know it's federal dollars, they always got recommendations and stuff. So thank you very much for the clarity.
Hi, Chair Woodward?
I mean, so I'm saying, so this fund, I mean, for these, the roof ramps and repair program, anyone who lives in these census tracts would be eligible for these for the home improvement?
Correct.
Yeah, for using these specific funds.
But we're going to target seniors for this program.
So Madam Chair?
Commissioner Nelson?
So one of the questions that I've had, especially, I know Commissioner Lubes, myself, and a few other commissioners are part of the Healthy Aging Ad Hoc, right? So we spent the past year creating the blueprint for successful aging here in Oakland County. And one of the items, one of the top 10 recommendations was taking a look at home repairs, right? There has been some confusion over the years in regards to we used to have some programs. I know people get kind of like the chore program mixed up with the home impairment program, and I understand the confusion with that because I get confused sometimes too speaking on it. So Rudy, you kind of just answered my question. So my initial question was going to be, I'm all about the home repair program. I think it's amazing and great. My question was going to be, I see $2 million is being dedicated to the roofs, ramp, and repair program. Where is the assurance that this is going to be for seniors? I hear you say it, but I don't read that within the resolution.
There should be, I thought, some language in there that actually says,
Shane, I got this.
Okay.
It's in the amendment.
Yeah, it's there.
So
Where's
you're
the
looking at the
amendment?
main resolution, and then if you go down to Cavell Amendment number 1, if you go back, yep, down,
Senior-owned homes will be given priority.
yep.
Hang on, I appreciate
No, you're good.
I don't think that's it.
No,
This is.
It's the other document.
So that's the amendment? That's why there's all this crosses out. So we're,
Is that this one?
Well, she's looking for it, may I
Yes,
ask?
thank you.
Sure.
And this is a grant program, the $2 million.
This is a grant
No
program.
payback.
correct.
This is a grant.
But we still have the other one that you spoke of, the Community Development Block Grant.
We do.
which is throughout the county.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Kristen, are you good?
One.
And if
I am good, though, one thing, it looks like, Rudy, I know that you've been collaborating with the Healthy Aging Ad Hoc Committee, especially with the formation of these study groups. It would be very helpful to kind of look at how we can cross these two, right?
I think that, as a result of, us having that conversation, looking at the blueprint, I think as a result of that, I think this is why, we really wanted to target, set aside this $2 million to target seniors, particularly the neediest of the needy, right, for this. So I think that, the blueprint will continue to kind of help give Shane, myself, and Health and Human Services an opportunity to figure out, as we think through initiatives particularly about aging in place, housing affordability, all these things are important to seniors. And so we'll continue to kind of, figure out where the opportunities are to take, our senior priorities, our ARPA priorities, and kind of, bring those together.
There's still a
And
lot
then,
more
and
to
more than just ARPA, so, so,
Sure. Nope,
yeah,
I
it's
get
on
it.
our radar.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Thank you.
Commissioner Cavell, this would be an opportunity for you to introduce your amendment.
Oh, hey, I'd like to introduce an amendment. Good call, Penny. I'd like to introduce an amendment. You should see it on the agenda. It's titled Cavell Amendment Number 1. May I ask for a
I
second?
hope there's not a number 2. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Cavell, support from Commissioner Powell. Any comments on the amendment? Prompt the vote, please.
On the amendment?
Correct.
We have 6 yeas and 1 nay.
All right, the amendment passes. Thank you. We're back to our resolution. Does anybody have any last questions on the resolution? So I want to thank Susan and Tim for joining us. No questions. I know you were here before, so you've answered questions, and apparently good job. Thank you.
Hi, Susan.
All right, so we need we're going to vote on the resolution as amended now, so please prompt the vote.
We have 6 yeas, 1 nay.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. That is our last scheduled item on the agenda. We move to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment and declare this meeting adjourned at 1:48 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Public meeting.